Hey everyone, Chad from Mancrafting again. I'm still in my backyard, I'm still welding, but I had a thought. There's 5 things that I wanted to share with everybody that help me weld better. Now, I'm not a good welder by any stretch. I'm not a professional welder. I don't weld for a living. There's lots of YouTube videos out there that I've watched that are really good on technique and improving your welding skills. But some of the things that I never saw out there that I just kind of came across over time are super simple, but they've really improved my overall ability to weld. So let me share those with you right after this. Okay, so there's 5 things that I've used or done to improve my flux core welding, and I want to share those with you today. First one, super cheap, it's like $5-6 a can. Anti-Spatter Spray. Anti-Spatter Spray. So this spray, say that 10 times fast. Anti-Spatter Spray. So the Anti-Spatter Spray, you spray it on the part before you weld, and as you're welding, flux core welding is extremely messy, and it will throw basically molten metal onto your part. And if you don't have something like the Anti-Spatter Spray on your part, you're going to end up having to grind that stuff off to get a nice smooth, clean surface. With this, you just hit it with a brush, or if you hit it with your grinder with a wire cut brush on it, it just comes right off. Nothing sticks to the metal part. Pretty much any splatter just kind of wipes right away. My second tip is, it's actually a nozzle, it's not a tip, but it is a tip. I'm giving you a tip. So when you buy your welder, typically it's going to come with a copper nozzle on it like this, and the design is so that when you have it and you're welding, it's going to trap gas inside of this nozzle so that when you're doing typical regular MIG welding, you have a good amount of gas right there at the weld. When you're doing flux core welding, it seems like you're doing MIG welding, but it's a little bit different, and the flux core is what's actually facilitating the weld. So all that's needed is this little nozzle, and I'll show you. So on my actual gun, you can see this is the flux core nozzle, then you have your tip and then your wire coming out. So just imagine if you're trying to weld and you have this on, you're not going to see a whole lot. That nozzle actually goes right to the edge of this tip, so you can't see your wire that easily on the part. It makes it a little bit difficult because if you're looking here, I've got more wire out than I should when I'm welding. It's actually going to be about half of that. So if you want to be able to see where you're welding, having the appropriate nozzle makes a huge difference. Okay, so speaking of nozzles, right? This stuff right here, Nozzle Gel. So it's just this blue gel. I think I've also gotten it gray. But anyway, it's some kind of a petroleum-based gel. And when you dip it on your tip prior to welding, it's gonna put a little coating on there. And just like the Anti-Spatter Spray, it's going to prevent junk from building up on your nozzle. I still wipe my nozzle off, but it makes it much easier to wipe that stuff off. Tip number 4, standard in the industry is soapstone, and this is in a soapstone holder. And basically it's just a stone. If you're trying to mark a piece, you can kind of see, it almost leaves kind of like a waxy coating where you've written. It's really difficult to see where you've marked with that. Now, if you look here with the silver streak, somebody recommended this to me. Look how much more noticeable that is. And even if you're writing through the greasy spatter spray, it's still gonna show up where you've written. I find this thing to be indispensable. It also allows me to, I use a handmade jig or a homemade jig to mark repetitive. I weld a lot of this plate with a nut right here. In order to get that centered, I made a little jig, and this pen goes into that jig and gives me a nice round, well-defined area for setting up my part to weld. And the last tip is good lighting. Just like when you're doing video, you want to have good lighting when you're welding. I have pretty decent ambient light out here, and if I was in the direct sun, it'd probably even be better, but I just have a shaded area, a lot of trees. So I found it useful to put in a couple of 100-watt bulbs in my fan that sits right above where I weld. That gives me the ability, especially when I'm actually welding, to see the part very clearly, because as soon as the welding helmet turns on, you've got a very dark area to deal with. So it's adjustable, and having that adjusted properly is a smart thing to do. So take the time to figure out where that adjustment is. So let's recap. Anti-spatter spray, number 1 tip. Number 2, have the correct nozzle. A gasless nozzle for flux core welding, a gas nozzle for MIG welding. Number 3, nozzle gel. Use nozzle gel to help keep the tip of your gun and the nozzle on your gun clean. Number 4, use Silver Streak by Markal, M-A-R-K-A-L. Use a Silver Streak pen versus a soapstone. And last but not least, good lighting. Illuminating your part when you're welding makes a huge difference. So that's it. Those are my 5 tips. I'm not a professional welder. I am an extreme novice, but between YouTube videos telling me how to get better technique and just a few discoveries on my own or somebody recommending these things to me, I've been able to improve my welding substantially just in a few months. If you're having difficulty flux core welding, if you find you're getting spatter everywhere and it's difficult to clean up, use the AntiSplatter Spray. If your nozzle's getting filled with gunk and it's difficult to clean off, use the Nozzle Gel. If you don't find soapstones to be helpful in marking your parts, if you find that they're difficult to follow the lines or to define a line, using the Silver Streak by Markal, that's an excellent pen for marking on steel parts, even if they're greasy. And then of course the last thing was good lighting. I hope that you found this video helpful. I was out here welding and I was thinking, I've been wanting to do a video on this for a while. Let me just take a break, let my welder cool down, and share these tips that have made welding just a little bit more enjoyable, a little easier for me. I hope you find them helpful. If you do, please like this video. If you have any questions, please comment. If you have any tips that would make me a better welder that I haven't mentioned, please mention those in the comment section. And lastly, if you find the kind of videos that I'm doing helpful or useful or interesting, please subscribe. I do a lot of different things and I try to group them by subject matter. So if you're really into Yeti stuff, and you could care less about welding, make sure you subscribe, because when my Yeti videos come out, you want to make sure you see them. If you don't care about Yetis and you really like welding stuff, then subscribe, because I'm going to be posting videos as I learn, as I do projects that have to do with welding. Anything that has to do with man crafting, that's sandblasting, that's grinding, metalwork, woodwork. By no means is this exclusive to men. Man crafting was coined as a joke between me and my best friend when our wives were giving us a hard time for using a Cricut. When I'm using my Cricut, it's one of those things you go into Joann's or Michael's and you buy a Cricut cutter. And so sometimes, it's a little intimidating. I'm a guy, I'm probably the only guy in there. When you're crafting and you're a guy, you don't want it to sound foo-foo. You want it to sound manly. So we're man crafting. I hope you enjoy this videos. I hope you're having a great day. And thank you for watching my ramblings. Have a great day.